Hey everyone! The weather discourse on the Hill today will go something like this. What the hell happened to the other half of the snowfall forecast? It turns out halves are a good way to think about the question. There are two processes that lead to precipitation. One, large-scale dynamic lifting of an air mass, and two, local or micro-scale convective currents of rising air. Think of the first as synoptic scale, but don't worry about what that means for now. Think of the second as local scale, as in the size of the resort municipality of Whistler. Watch this loop of yesterday's storm rolling through. Note the giant synoptic scale cloud shield that is yesterday's cold front. On the back edge of this shield, there's a transition to different clouds. Those new spotty clouds are convective clouds, or convection in weather speak. This is a great example of the two types of precipitation, one caused by large-scale dynamic lift and the other by local currents of rising air, which caused the overnight and morning flurries. Now, here's the nub. Numerical weather models have a nasty proclivity to overdo or overforecast post-frontal convective precipitation in the Coast Range. And that's my snap assessment of what went slightly sideways in the Super Dave ensemble yesterday. But snap assessments of what caused what are best left to local climatologists, pretendologists, and elitist professors who don't know anything about BC weather. So, I'm inviting all my weather colleagues to comment on my comment, and take me down if you think it necessary, because the powder picker tribe is only interested in the truth, and not their truth, whatever the hell that is, because we're all fucked if there's competing truths. In terms of what you experience, think of the synoptic scale as the continuous dreary days on end of rain on the West Coast versus an hour of thunderstorms in the summer or winter, because that happens too, and that's where this post gets really fucking scary for all of us who are riding things composed of metal up and down the hunting grounds of Zeus and all the other thunder and lightning gods. And believe me, there are a lot of those mofos lurking out there, especially in some very recognizable and therefore predictable weather patterns. Here's a very incomplete list. Compliments of Wikipedia. Don't think it can happen? I've spoken with at least two people who believe they felt a pulse or something electrical while riding a chairlift at Whistler. They think lightning struck a tower or the lift line. Believe me, it didn't, because if it did, they wouldn't be here to speak about it. No one survives a lightning strike where, by the way, the heat generated is greater than the temperature of the sun. Some survive a lightning strike on something nearby, but that can be really ugly. For example, here's the golf bag of a gentleman who sought shelter from a thunderstorm under a tree, which became prey to those gods, and whose roots conducted the massive current thereby generated under the ground and smack into his bag, which turned out to be the last thing that guy ever touched. So if you're in the mountains and you hear thunder or see lightning, get the hell into the roundhouse ASAP. It happens more often than you'd think. I have a weather colleague who had a professor that died on a day hike along a very exposed ridgeline. Don't be that guy or gal, because even if you do survive, it ain't pretty. It's life-changing. And if you want to read some serious survivor stories, Google something like, struck by lightning. And to all you owners of ski resorts anywhere, I sure hope you have your weather forecasting techniques and safety protocols in working order. Because the day something goes wrong and a customer dies on the hill in a weather-related death, it always and only takes one death. I will happily dig into your forecasting techniques, your weather safety protocols, and the weather that day, as I did for the prosecution and the defense in the Queen of the North sinking. And as I, on my own for the sheer intrigue of it, dug into the 2010 Southern Straits sailing disaster that turned into the busiest day in Canadian Coast Guard history on the West Coast. And I am almost certain, given the obsolescent 1970s style analog approach to weather all of you seem to prefer, I will find something that screams for all the world to hear fucking negligence. So you might think about this seriously for just a moment. And if committing dollars to the most important variable in the customer satisfaction and safety equation, the weather, seems expensive and therefore undoable, here's a thought. How about you reroute some of those current dollars wasted on pretentious public posturing about that thing many of us learned folks are saying, and you will be too in a couple of years, will never manifest the idiotic climate catastrophe into something that actually does every fucking day. Weather. The end.